Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan, Tim.
Let's defund the police.
Let's not pretend we did.
What a brilliant fucking idea. Let's just do away with cops because we're mad at all cops for the doings of a handful of cops. I get that it's a larger problem than one incident, but we're going to focus on Minneapolis because we're from Minnesota and the greater Minneapolis area, and that's what I want to talk about, so that's what we're going to do.
This is going to go so badly if they do this.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the best idea, but basically, the Minneapolis City Council, in response to great public outcry and the riots over police violence and brutality, decided that we want to defund the police, meaning to divest the funds that are normally allotted for law enforcement coverage in the city and then disperse it to various social services organizations and other community groups that would then do the job of the police. So basically, eliminating the current model and then funneling that money elsewhere. And once the city would approve a plan to start divesting those funds, then they can begin the process of ending the culture of punishment in criminal justice.
Oh, so they want to treat it just like in school. You can't punish the children. You can just tell them stop doing that, and then they're supposed to stop doing that.
They magically will do that. There's no repercussions
to what you do. Yeah, it's...
Because it's not a matter of the police always being the aggressor. I'm sure there's no issue with people not respecting the authority or the badge or the uniform or the post itself, because how many of these great next future leaders of the world do we have sitting in schools these days, especially like in the St. Paul School District, where numerous teachers have been injured trying to break up fights or deal with children that are unruly? Your kids have no respect for cops because society has no respect for cops. Therefore, when they're told to do something, they don't fucking do it.
They feel like they don't have to do it because they've never been forced to do what they're supposed to do. They've never been put in their place. I'm sorry. A parent's job is to put their child in their place. And that is, I'm dad. I'm the authority. When you get out on your own, you can kind of start making your own choices. Hopefully, by the time you move out, you would have learned respect for authority, you would have learned respect for elders, and you would know what a good decision is and what a bad decision is.
And I would say even more paramount than all of those three is respect for the law and why it exists.
Yes.
Which ties into knowing right and wrong and having some remorse for committing crimes and not victimizing people. So this ending the culture of punishment in the criminal justice system idea, that's what the criminal justice system is for. It's for punishing people that don't respect the rules and break the law abhorrently and with little regard for safety of others. That's why we have it. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to this other social worker who was an arms worker. It's an adult mental health worker. And she's like, well, we don't even need like cops and jails. And I wanted to be like, we do, and as someone that worked in a jail for 11 years, yes, we fucking do. They are animals in there. All of them got there for doing dirt, for being convicted for a crime, and I doubt very few of them were set up or duped into the behavior that they partook in that got them inside those walls.
Yeah, it's not like the police were at the front of the bar saying, here, have a shot, and here's your car keys. Have a nice drive home.
Yeah, they're like, hey, I bet you can drink this real quick, and you'll still be fine to drive. Here, go. Hey, there's this guy dressed like a cop outside giving free shots at Goldschlager. Everybody out here, let's go. And then, they get like 18 DUIs out of that bar alone. The thing about this defund the police is some people think that a citizen-led community involvement team could step in. But what is that?
That's social workers, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's social workers and community leaders and people that agree to patrol the streets and intervene in these situations in low income or less fortunate neighborhoods.
Intervene.
Here's the thing, though. You're relying upon people to solve the problems of other people, and they say they will, but who knows if they can, is the most important part, because you've got untrained citizens taking on crime. And if they aren't about escalating things to arrests or going hands-on, then what are you going to do when the situation calls for that? If you defund the police and there's very few cops.
Not much you can do. And It also, this is a discussion I was having with somebody, when like medical personnel need to go to the scene of a shooting and stuff like that, they usually don't go in per policy of the departments until the area is cleared and it's safe for medical personnel to go in. So if there's no police to clear the scene of a shooting victim or even a domestic abuse victim, what are the ambulance drivers going to do?
Well, see, you're going to rely on these community leaders because there's not going to be no police. There'll be a handful of police, but, break glass in case of emergency, which, as you could see by the riots in Minneapolis and St. Paul, there was a lot of fucking emergency going on, and they didn't have enough cops to quell all of that shit, did they?
Well, they were also told to stand down. It took Governor Walz, how long to get to the National Guard in?
Yeah,
he should have been calling them up the first fucking night.
Oh, I would have had them on the streets, locked and loaded, ready to rock, night one. As soon as shit popped off, be like, mobilize and get your asses here in the next 5 fucking hours because shit's getting real in a hurry, and I'm going to deploy the cops in the riot gear, but they're just going to be the front line. You guys are going to be the foundation behind them. I laugh at this idea that average citizens are going to de-escalate civil disagreements that may require force, and there's no officers around who would be trained to handle such opposition because you don't want them brutalizing people, and then the city council puts up a vote to abolish the current policing system in Minneapolis, and it's a fucking veto-proof majority. First it was 13, then it was 12, then it was down to 9. They walked it back, a few of them who said, well, no, not so fast. We're not saying get rid of the police. We're saying let's redesign the way the department is run and weed out the bad apples, which is the logical explanation, not to take money out of law enforcement.
Just let's look at the policies and try some new stuff. I can get behind that.
But they think the magic fix to this situation is to stop having cops handle this shit and then have people go in. Now, I will say I have had little to no sympathy out of any of the police in my local jurisdiction when I need to call them involving a situation with the beast. Because they're like, oh, it's a domestic. I don't fucking care. It's a civil issue. Get a lawyer. Take it to court. Leave me alone. And I have said to I don't know how many of them, when these things happen, I call you. I tell you what happens. You write a report. I go to court. I have reports that show that, maybe it's he said, she said, or maybe it shows patternistic behavior that is indicative of a larger problem at all. And that's what it should do. But the cops are pretty pissed off. And frankly, they're sick of dealing with the beast and me because I call them for all manner of shit. I wish I didn't need to. I wish that she would play nicey nice and be mature.
But she can't.
Not for a number of reasons. So further down the article, they had this brilliant line. Council members said in interviews on Sunday that they did not yet have a specific plan to announce for what a new public safety system for the city would look like. So you want to get rid of the cops and you can't even figure out what the fuck you're going to do after the fact?
You should have a plan in place first.
And everybody's all like, Camden, New Jersey. New Jersey. Yeah, I get it. You had a fucking terrible crime rate. And what they did is they kind of redesigned how the police patrolled. They put them more into the community on foot so they would interact with the citizens. It kind of helped. Did I do a bunch of fucking cramming on this topic beforehand? No, because I don't think any city that implements that plan should be the model. Because if they did it years ago, and years ago doesn't even apply to now. Yeah. Everything's speculative. You cannot leave public safety up to conjecture. How do you forecast the fucking crime?
You can't.
And if you get rid of a number of the cops or all the cops, do you think that people are going to go, all right, the cops aren't killing people now? No, motherfucker. They are going to go buck wild. It's going to be like the purge out there.
Yeah.
Look at the riots. You could say, well, those were just out-of-town troublemakers. Bullshit. The people that were looting stores were not out-of-towners. Some of the people that set the fires were, that pumped up the volume on the media attention, sure. But all those people that were stealing the goddamn Nike shoes out of the Foot Locker on Lake Street, hello, or the liquor stores that got robbed, the convenience stores that got robbed, the pawn shop where the guy was fucking shooting at people to defend his business.
The Target
especially. I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that store was looted and destroyed by mostly people that were from around there or that knew the people that were from around there and said, come on down, we're going to steal a bunch of shit. Local troublemakers.
Cops aren't doing anything. Let's go get stuff.
So how did that fucking 5 or 6 day stretch go? They said like millions upon millions of dollars, like hundreds of millions of dollars of damage.
$152 million worth of damage they're predicting.
It has to be way more than that.
Maybe I got a decimal point in the wrong spot, but it's a lot.
I don't think it's approaching $1 billion. I mean, maybe nationwide it is, because there were mirror protests in numbers of cities.
Yeah. Like a lot of places I see stuff, scrolling through videos on Facebook, and there was a guy in New York who went out on the street, and he went into a predominantly white neighborhood and asked if the people felt that black neighborhoods would be safer if there were no police. And the people he put on camera, I mean, I'm sure not all of them said yes, but they were like, oh yeah, I think black neighborhoods would be safer, blacks would be safer, there'd be less racism. The cops were originally designed to catch slaves that escaped and everything like that.
In the fucking South.
An oppressive system. And, I hate the police and everything. I think it was like 4 different white people that he interviewed. Again, the only ones he put on camera that said, yes, it would be safer. He then went into
So you
Brooklyn.
got to asterisk the fact that he got to pick and choose.
He got to pick and choose who he put on in the final video.
Okay.
And he did this, and I'm sure he did the same thing when he went to, I think it was Brooklyn. He went there and he was talking to black people and asking them if they felt they would be safer without a police presence. And not one said, yeah, we'd be safer. They were all like, are you fucking crazy? Get rid of the cops. It's already bad enough around here, And the one lady, she's just like, I have family and friends who are cops. I respect cops, and we definitely need them. I don't feel that they're completely racist. There's bad apples, whatever she said, So it was interesting. It's just like all these white people in a white neighborhood think, oh yeah, it'd be safer. And I'm not going to put a political mindset on these people, whether it be liberals or whatever. It's like they think the black neighborhood is safer, and the black neighborhood's like, no, we need cops. So I'd like to see how many people that didn't make it in the final video, like if you talk to 100 people, what percentage of that 100 said, get rid of the cops, which one said, keep the cops, and then same thing within the white neighborhood.
So you want them to do a political version of the Family Feud. 100 people were asked, let's see the answers on the board.
You could do that, yeah.
Come up to the podium. All these people that you see not obeying the law now when there's cops, you think they're going to magically obey the law when there's no cops? Because that complete lunacy that happened in Minneapolis and St. Paul on the Midway, that is a modicum of what you will see. People are not good by nature. Now, do I think it's going to lead to like a complete societal breakdown in Minneapolis? No, I do not.
Oh, I think not at first, but it definitely will eventually.
It can easily snowball into fucking chaos. And then what are you going to do? Call in the National Guard because there's no fucking cops? Call in the Hennepin County and Ramsey County Sheriff's Departments because they're still law enforcement agencies at large? Because one talk was get rid of MPD and then expand Hennepin County Sheriff's Department and then give the cops from MPD the opportunity to interview for jobs there so that it would just be a giant contract for the whole county agency to police Minneapolis. And I'm fine with that because you're trading what is seen as a problematic, brutish, and idiotic police force that is out of touch with its citizenry, trading it for another law enforcement agency that, to the best of my recollection, I don't hear about Hennepin County Sheriff's Department having as many problems with brutality and crooked officers and all kinds of claims like MPD does.
Okay, I'm just curious though, because sometimes you'll get sheriff deputies and city police working together on things.
Yep.
But is it specifically in every incident that it's MPD? It was an MPD officer that committed a crime of some kind or whatever?
Well, if it's within Minneapolis, most of the time it's going to be MPD.
Okay, I don't know how often Hennepin County Sheriff would patrol the Minneapolis area. There's county roads in Minneapolis, but I don't know if they patrol. I wondered if they just leave it for the city. It's like, well, you guys are that's your area.
Okay. So how that breaks down is you have county that oversees the whole area.
Yep.
And a number of those municipalities might be small townships that don't have money or resources for their own police department.
It's the same for Anoka County. Yeah.
So Andover does not have a police department. They have the Anoka County Sheriff's Office.
Yep.
So you got the sheriffs that they contract out to communities that don't have a police force, or maybe they just think it's cheaper. So Hennepin County has all those cities. But for Minneapolis, because it's so big, it has to have a police force. It has multiple precincts, it's so large. It's a city of what, 460,000 fucking people? So just the fact that they could contract to the sheriff's department, it could work. But you'd have to hire a bunch more officers.
They need a lot more. Like, how many officers are usually routinely on patrol in Minneapolis? You'd probably need to hire at least half that, if not the same number.
They said they wanted hundreds of more officers in recent years. No, MPD.
Oh,
MPD has wanted hundreds of more officers. And, you know, the grand poobah of all this is Mayor Jacob Frey. And he is against abolishing the police department.
But he also didn't do anything to help them.
No, he did not. He is a fence sitter. He wants to have the best of both worlds, and that's fine, because you want to look for the best pragmatic, middle-of-the-road answers to some of these problems that doesn't favor one side or the other. But at the same time, he did not do enough. He does not support the police well enough. And then he kind of backtracks and, well, I don't want to get rid of the cops. So it's not unusual for a city to have a mayor who's kind of spineless in the face of chaos. Look at Seattle. Okay. Yeah. The Seattle CHOP, C-H-O-P, or Capitol Hill Organized Protest, as it is known. A bunch of protesters that are upset about the George Floyd death. So it was supposed to be a law enforcement free zone for people to live in peace. They wanted no cops inside at all, but yet they have a small group of armed occupants to defend it. So your answer to not having cops is to have people not trained as cops act like cops.
Yep. And they also, just to point out another hypocrisy of these people, they're against stop and frisk, they're against border walls, and they have exactly that going on there. Right. They've built the wall around their zone, and they have random stop and frisk. You can't get in there without showing an ID, yet IDs are somehow racist.
Well, you need to control the flow of guns into the area, because that's what they're doing, right? It's just what the police would do. You don't want people bringing guns into the CHOP and shooting people. You're right on top of that, aren't you? No, because what happened? Oh, shit. A few weeks ago, one person was killed and another was critically injured after a shooting in the CHOP. And the cops tried to show up, and the protesters said, no, you can't come in. So it took forever to get to the victim.
What they did was, they wouldn't let the cops in. The ambulance can't go in because, as I said before, ambulances and medical crews do not go in until the cops get the area locked down and get things safe. So the ambulance crew waited outside of the wall. Mm-hmm. Officers went in there. They said, we're not here to arrest anybody. We're here just trying to help the victim of the shooting. I saw the body cam footage, and nobody would help them. I mean, these protesters that were there were flailing their arms around and screaming and yelling like fucking 4-year-olds that can't have a cupcake. So what these people do, because the ambulance wouldn't go in right away, is they say, the police and the ambulance wouldn't help us. They just sat outside. The response by the police was like, here's all the video cam footage we took.
Right.
You guys are full of shit. We tried to help. We told you what we were there to do, and you wouldn't let us. So this person died, could have lived if you just shut the fuck up and let us in.
And they have no idea who did it.
They have no idea who did it.
Nobody's talking. They're trying to investigate, and I'm going to air quote that, investigate, because to the best of their ability, they can't. People aren't playing nicey nice with the cops. So finally the mayor found her balls, and she decided, we're going to shut this shit down. And I think it was like yesterday it was supposed to get shut down, and they started coming in trying to take the barricades. And there's people in there like, everybody needs to come down to the CHOP right now and block them from taking the construction equipment to get rid of the barricades. That's not your land. You might occupy that zone, but all you are is acting out an episode of The Walking Dead minus the zombies. I just, for the life of me, cannot understand what the fuck anybody would be thinking trying to say, let's get rid of the police. It's idealistic, daydreamy, child-level mentality bullshit. I don't like the cops because I don't feel like they care about me.
So, your experiences with police have been optimally positive, but they've always been there for you.
For the most part, yeah.
When you've called them, they've shown up, or they've called you back.
They've never said, fuck you, we're not coming.
Yeah.
So imagine if you've got now a situation that requires you in the city of Minneapolis to try to mediate something between someone who allegedly stole and the person who was allegedly stolen from. Are you going to go in there if they don't know you? Are they going to give a shit about your opinion that you need to present a case? The person that's getting the finger pointed at him is going to be like, fuck you, I'm not talking to you. Oh, if only we had a police officer here to examine the evidence and write a report. Because are these people going to write fucking reports? Is there going to be a uniform system in place for all these different agencies and community watch groups to use the same form to report the interactions? Are they going to get a training to know how to do this shit? Because guess what? You could save yourself all of that fucking trouble if you just rely upon the police force that's already in place and you weed out the bad apples. And you stop this fucking warrior training that are teaching cops how to kick ass more and view the public as opponents rather than constituents and civilians. Taught by a military guy.
Yeah, but sometimes you need to be able to outfight somebody.
Sometimes,
that
yes.
1 out of 50 people you got to stop and talk to is going to fight you.
And they know how to fight. Or they've been in a lot of fights and they know enough about fighting.
Or
that
they're bigger than you and stronger than you, in the case of a female cop.
I suppose I'll give you that.
So I don't have a problem with them getting military training to kick ass. What they need to do is know when to properly apply it.
That's one thing that I think more people need to understand about doing this job. Is we're talking about human beings, not machines that can control their emotions so easily. So it doesn't take much for someone to go over the line because in the heat of the moment they're trying to react and your training goes out the window because your fight or flight takes effect and you got that fucking adrenaline dump that just, overtakes everything.
Yep.
Like, think about how many videos you've seen where it starts off as like a simple face-to-face. Like on their body cam, it seems like, okay, this seems pretty routine. And then somebody gets a little worked up and then the cop gets way more worked up and they overcompensate. Things go haywire. And then the cops are like, fuck, I went too far. And they get jammed up and they can't go, sorry. Because then you're admitting fault and then you're going to get sued. It's better to say, I'm sorry. Let's de-escalate here. I might have been a bit too aggressive. Way better to say that shit than to fucking let it roll, like what happened with George Floyd, where the 2 rookie cops are like, we asked him if we should stop, and he said no. And he just sat there and knelt with his hands in his pockets. Well, the 4th officer, that Asian guy, just stood there and basically told the public to shut the fuck up when they're like, he's dying. And then it's like, call for an ambulance. Yeah, he's not breathing. Well, no shit. You were on his back for 9 fucking minutes.
Wasn't he handcuffed already at that point?
I believe so,
yeah,
yes.
He was. So let him sit up. Anyway,
so because one fucking overzealous cop couldn't pull the stick out of his ass, now we've got this domino effect that's supposed to revolutionize anti-racist efforts. It's supposed to end systemic racism. It's supposed to be our civil rights movement of this generation. What it is overblown hype. You take the cop, you convict the cop. You tell all the other cops, if you behave like him, you will go to prison. You make a fucking example of him. Therefore, you've got the standard set on what not to do. I guarantee you every cop that watched that video went, holy shit. I can't really think of any cop that'd be like, yeah, you knelt on a guy's back and neck like that so he couldn't breathe for 9 minutes? I'm sure that was fine. He probably deserved it. You'd be out of your fucking mind and in no way deserve that badge, gun, or responsibility.
Exactly.
If you felt that way. But thankfully, we can get rid of people like Derek Chauvin and the others involved, and now mandate that supervisors respond to calls that require force, and that the cops need to be better about calling each other out. And then you see if things improve. It's about incremental improvements, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and it's time to reinvent the wheel.
I agree.
Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It. That is at What Do We Call It. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
And I'm number 1 fan Tim.
And that's the end.